Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, the 24th of April. We're sorry we're a couple of minutes late. We've had some technical issues to the hundreds of people waiting to watch us on YouTube. Item 1 is apology for absence. We do have some apologies, don't we?
We have apologies for absence from councillors Castle, Gallagher, Lang, and also Councillor Horncastle.
Okay, thank you. The minutes, item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting, pages 1 to 10. We've got some questions about those minutes. Councillor Dale.
No, mine was just, I did send my apology for both the morning meeting and the afternoon meeting, but they're not down.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind.
Could we amend that, please? Yeah.
I didn't give them to Nicola, sorry. Nicola, I only gave one button there.
Okay.
Sorry if I didn't get them.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, we'll make that amendment. Councillor Morphy.
Next, after the Storm Arwen discussion, we tasked someone with contacting members of Parliament to request a major representation to the government to obtain clarity on the digital switchover. Just wondering who we tasked. Well, it's not very clear in the minutes.
It's not very clear in my memory either. I actually can't remember. Genuinely can't remember. Can anybody remember?
I think we said that we would contact BT, but then it was changed to we'll contact members of Parliament to lobby the government.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Helen. It's likely she led on the Storm Arwen.
Sorry, can you speak up?
Sorry, so I was whispering to the chair.
So we'll find out. We'll go back to Helen. We'll ask who she thinks it would be best to contact the members of Parliament.
She may have already done it.
She may have done it, and if she hasn't and she wants that to come from the committee, I'm happy to sign that as the chair or whatever. Yeah, whatever's deemed most effective, I think is. Okay, thank you, Nick. And Dan.
My question was just the same, Chair, just to see if the Parliament members had been in government.
Okay, and could we have, we agreed with the amendment, we've agreed with true and fair record? Agreed. Yeah. We need a proposer and a seconder for that, or we just agree them?
I think you agree.
We just agree them. Thank you very much. The next item is disclosure of members' interest. Does anybody have any interests to disclose? No. And the next item is for information. It's the forward plan of cabinet decisions. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dale.
Can I just ask about the Climate Change Action Plan 24-26? The climate change targets are now set within the whole of the council policies or council committees or whatever you want to say. Will we see that beforehand or are we going to see it after?
You won't see it beforehand.
Sorry?
You won't see it beforehand because it will be on today's agenda. The current arrangements are that we will circulate the minutes of the meeting of Cabinet on the 7th of May. If you're content with those the way they are, then fine. But if you want to refer that report back to this committee so that you can look at the implementation or any aspect of it, then you can do so.
Yeah, I mean, as it's the action plan, will it go in the end to full council or for agreement, or is it being agreed by the cabinet?
The forward plan normally states if it's also a council decision.
It's full council decision, yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. The forward plan would normally say if it was a council decision. It's just listed for cabinet.
It doesn't look like it is a council decision. It looks like it's a cabinet decision. That's my understanding.
I can check.
It's just so for clarity, because obviously, I mean, because it's changed from being the action plan to being just a different way of actually taking forward targets. They're not being set in the action plan, because climate change gives so many of them now.
Yeah.
Change. So a lot of people have left. So really what we want to know is how that is actually going to be run out and who by across the whole of the council.
Well, again, as I say, I mean, the reason why we split the forward plan into two parts. The first part is cabinet decisions that the cabinet has taken since you last met. And what that does, it gives you the opportunity to then say, actually, a lot of cabinet have said, but we would like their own work programme for whatever reason that might be.
Right.
So when you next meet, you'll have the cabinet decision. And you can look at that and decide as a committee that actually there are elements of that you would like this committee to go out further.
So I guess the report that's going to the Cabinet on the 7th of May will be on the council website on the 1st of May.
Yeah.
And we can all take a look then and see if there's anything that
Thank you, that's
overly
fine.
concerns us. Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you. And so then the next item is the substantive. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I've just got one question, right? Where it's the Energise and Glide levelling up deep dive on Bow Street. Is that just concerning Bow Street? Not the rest of the money that's coming, just Bow Street? That's okay, thank you.
And we'll have a conversation about the Energise and Glide. That is confirmed as a item on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
June the 3rd, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Councillor Bones agreed that I can have some
Yes.
members of the community who run
Yes.
community projects, which I have to say I'm pleased about. Thank you.
It's a busy agenda, but he said 10 to 15 minutes.
Be quick.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think, sorry, Chair, it's just what Councillor Carty said. It's not Bow Street, it's Bow's Court,
All right.
Okay.
which is retrofitting the houses of.
Yes,
Bow's Court,
and
not
Bow's
Bow
Court.
Street.
Bow Street is done, isn't it? Yeah.
Millions of pounds were spent brought in, but
Yeah.
don't start me on that. But anyway, this is Bow's Court, which
Yeah.
is about affordable housing rather than infrastructure. That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the substantive piece of business today is about the Northumberland infrastructure funding statements, pages 17 to 54. And we've got Rob Murphy, the Director of Planning, here to talk to us about it. So Rob, over to you.
Thanks for that, Chair. Yeah, the statement was something we started publishing about 4 years ago. Because we've got some requests for information about Section 106 funding. So we provided a way of doing that. The report is really intended to be both in plain English and be self-contained. In other words, you shouldn't have to look at it as a member of as a general member of the public, and then doing lots of other background and information. So it's pitched in the way relating to general reader. It's been subject to a number of changes over the last couple of years. And I do recall that this group who said that it would be interesting to see it broken down by lack area as well. So that's now the headline really, I suppose, is in section 2, financial data on the funding received. And the headlines there, that's in a period of this report version, we secured another 750,000. The money that came in that year was approximately 5 million. Level on we have a total of 11 million. Prior to that, add to that around 20 others, unfortunately. The other thing that the report touches on is this will probably be the last version of the report in this format, because the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act included in it the facility for the Secretary of State to impose a mandatory tariff-based system for developer contributions. However, that will almost certainly run out of parliamentary time before the election. So I don't want to do any second guessing on what will come forward for those changes. However, based on what we know, it will probably be a variation on what's called the community infrastructure levy that sees, rather than large schemes contributing individually negotiated pots of money, all development in the county will pay into a fund on the basis of square metres and a charging rate per square metre depending on market area, and then we would via what would be an infrastructure delivery strategy. So that would be an urgent piece of work that we need to do. The local plan does include within it at the moment a costed evaluation of look at how many houses are going to be built between now and 2035, and what the headline figures are for education, healthcare, etc. on student level, and the two figures add up to each other. If we had a new tariff-based system, that would need to be much more detailed and would actually need to set up prescribed schemes for improvement. For example, exactly where new schools are going to go, or new, say, GP surgery. The benefit for the local area is that if it takes place in the way that's still that a town council or a parish council would get 15% of the take in their area automatically, and that would rise to 25% if they had an up-to-date neighbourhood plan. However, that is still in the detail to be agreed, and I don't want to second guess what a new government would look at this, because it will be tied into other planning reform agendas in terms of housing. The final thing I'll say is that, notwithstanding those comments, I'd be interested in hearing any other refinements that you would suggest or any other requests for further information or expansion on certain issues, because hanging behind this report, we have a very large amount of data. It's not as simple as coming out with simple figures, because actually all the different historic section 106 agreements all have different trigger points, different time periods, different geographic areas they cover. But if you have any quick information, we can look at, is there a better way of presenting that? And I can also respond to particular questions of that particular scheme.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with the question, then Councillor Dale. So just on that point then, Rob, about the data, one of the things that struck me was that on page 28 in section 2, we've got during the 2022-23 year, we've had basically £750,000 agreed in new contributions, and there'll be contributions made in the future with trigger points assigned to specific applications. We've also actually collected during that year £5 million. So they're from previous applications, and the trigger points have been reached during that year. And then that £5 million is added to the £10 million in the pot already to make a total of £15 million. What I'd be interested in is seeing some historical data with those same two figures in each year that shows us the actual amount that we're agreeing each year and the amount we're collecting each year, so that we can get a feeling of the trends, whether we're collecting more than we used to, less than we used to, but also what the cumulative value of the agreed but not yet collected money is as well. So that might be, there may be £100 million that we haven't yet collected. I'm not suggesting for a moment there is, but what's that value that we might get in the future, assuming, and I realise it actually says in the report that not all the trigger points are achieved, but assuming the trigger points were to be achieved, what would we collect? So would that be okay, just to sort of?
Yeah, we could. And that's a good question, actually. It exposes an issue behind that very simple section 2, financial data funding received. I mean, there's you three figures there, all A, B, and C. It's really clear that on the face of it, if we got in £5 million last year, and we only secured a new amount for the future, 750,000, that sounds like we're not doing as well now as we did in the past. But there is the issue that the bulk of money comes in from very large sites. Long build out to the figure points at different levels. You have to pay. So actually, that £5 million received in 1 year was well been secured over a number of years.
Yeah.
It could be either less or more than 756,000. But I think it'd be useful for us to look at a time series trajectory of what we were agreeing.
Yeah.
Having said that, there is one asterisk to this point, in that that statistic is heavily distorted by if you get some very large schemes coming along that they secure outline permission for. And quite often, house builders will have a number of large sites they get outline for, then over the next 2 or 3 years, they will flesh those out into full schemes. So there's a lot of clarity needed in quoting headline figures here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I think going down to C, which you mentioned, that the total amount received prior to the reported year that's not been spent 10 million, nearly 11 million pounds. And I think my interest is that how many that cover, because I know certainly with some 106 agreements, they have to be spent within a certain time limit. So it would be interesting to break down, see how long that when that actual money first came in. So you should be able to map it through, which is exactly basically what you're saying. You map it through from the first one, which has got the longest outstanding and how much longer that's got before it has to be returned.
Yeah.
Because that is a concern to me. If the money isn't used properly within the time limit given on the condition, then the money will be lost. And I would like to know what the county council is actually doing to ensure that that loss does not occur.
Yeah, and the way of looking at this is that figure under C of 10,830,000 is not subject to one time limit.
No.
Yeah, I think people understand. There are many section 106s in there. Some of them will have been part paid, full paid, part spent. And the only way you can actually look at trigger points on finding out, you look at an individual basis. We have spreadsheets of every single 106. What we have done for the last few years is we actively track all of the 106s so that we know when they are getting toward the timing out period. And actually, as well, the thing that I have supplied is that in the past, we can be very, very short payback periods. And actually, to put the schemes, all the unit longer ones. So we have moved to a default longer time period for the timing out as well. Because actually, one could argue if you give a very short time period, that's an argument for that you're giving an open net for the developer not to pay it unless you can spend it.
Yeah.
Spending it, coming to a point here, spending it as well, in addition to all the time period and figures, how you spend it is subject to variation. So some schemes, the spending tied to that scheme, that's for a particular identified thing. On other ones, it's a collection of permissions contribute to spending on one thing. And then you take, say, off-site affordable housing. Sometimes that goes to a particular scheme, or it goes to what we call our housing developer fund, which we use to fund social housing. And that is subject to a bidding process where ourselves or housing associations can bid into to build affordable housing. And we also sometimes then procure stock out of that as well. So I'm not trying to dodge the question anyway. I'm saying there's lots of different variables to all of this, and that we did want to have a table in, section 2, which is your headline figures. But really, section 2 raises as many questions about detail as the overview gives you. But it's a rough indication. The reason why I wanted to have section 2 in is it's a rough indication to the scale of the issue that we're talking about. So, for another point of context, when you look at affordable and social housing delivery, we deliver 4 times as many social and affordable housing through the planning system through 106 as other activities combined. So it is really significant, this, in terms of delivering on infrastructure in its wider sense.
Can I come back on that, because it's important. I actually wrote the 106 agreement for play parks at Tyndale. That's going back a long time ago, which is basically for sport and play. And actually, because we're rural areas, majority of our play park and sport areas are run by the local community. And it was important that actually that came in. So I think it would be helpful if maybe all the 106 agreements in councillor's ward, they are informed about them. Maybe that would be helpful, because it would help everybody knowing exactly what funding is available in their ward, and they can actually make sure and try and rise the relevant body, whatever it is, to actually apply or take forward a project. Because that to me is, otherwise, if it's sitting there and people aren't using it, then we should find a way of using it. It meets the conditions.
Absolutely. There is a spreadsheet, because I sit on the 106 committee that allocates the grants. There is a spreadsheet on the council's website that sets it out by area and what's left in the sport pot and what's left in the play pot. And they have just done an exercise probably about 2 months ago, I'm thinking, and maybe maybe that could be repeated to the county councils, but certainly all the town and parish councils where there was money left were written to and told there's this amount of money left for play and this amount of money left for sport. So that has happened recently, but maybe Heather could just repeat that to the councillors involved. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it sounds more involved than it is. We had an inconsistent approach in the county as an echo from district days, because you're right, Anne, you know, certain districts had a policy about requiring to go a pot, okay, and other ones didn't. That policy approach has now ceased, so the pot is diminishing. But when we did the local plan examination, we looked at this issue and actually thought that it would be advantageous to have a full objective of assessment of sport and play open space throughout the entire county, both on a qualitative and on a quantitative basis, with a view then to having a 106 or a SIL policy that put money into that and then distributed on that basis, and there'd be like a Mark II version of the sport and play committee. But we're seeing the final results of that audit, or the actual on-site work, I think that's taken place, that audit. So we should be looking to adopt that as policy, I'm hoping, by the end of this year.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Eileen, thank you.
My questions are less than that, and if you go to page, I want to ask questions on page 46 and 47. But on page 48 onwards, it tells you what your last spends are anyway. But the ones on 46 to 47, right, I'll be quite interested if you could actually get the deadline dates and then balance this for me. Nick, I didn't know there was a link on the website for the 106, so it'd be really useful if that link could be sent out, because us as councillors, as well as the parish councillors, and I'm not a parish councillor by the way, we have ideas of what could be spent in the area. Certainly when I've looked at this, I thought, oh, I know who we could spend that on, I know what we can spend that on, right? But I don't know what the deadlines are, you know, for the spends, which is quite a big thing in its sense, because you know what it's like when you're working in the statutory sector, how long it actually takes to get something done.
Put there as an action, what we'll do is there'll be elements of, some of the money will be non-time limited and be a pot. We want really scheme-based time limited and trigger points on it. I'll get an answer to you on that.
That'd be lovely, because then we can look at it, plus there's a collection of points, that's one, not all in power stations.
Yeah, I just add to the point I made when I introduced this, is that we now have a really robust approach to the 106 and the monitoring of it. The tension is we've got loads of data, but I wanted to make this document readable and not 250 pages long, but we have it, and this is why it's to ask questions for more information like this, because we do have the information.
I actually think this is really quite interesting what you've written for this section of it, because honestly, I've looked at it and I thought, well, what are they going to use that for? What are they going to use that for? And I didn't know about the deadline date, so that's even more. Sparked my curiosity.
There's a lot of money going into Blythe from these pots, because every month, just about every time we meet as a committee, there's usually at least one application from Blythe. We'll get that circulated. So Nick, I think you were next, and then Jeff.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions about the area breakdowns, if that's okay. They're all simple, so if I fire them all out. First of all, looking at the, look through them all. The lists are very different for each area. So you've explained that some areas have sport and play.
That feature on you,
but they're all really different. So, for example, Tynedale, where I'm a councillor, it doesn't have development contributions for community facilities, which are to cycling, travel, and local centres. Why are they all so different? That's question one. Shall I carry on or?
No, go on.
Second one is, why has Tyndale received £10,000 for the coastal mitigation service? And it's not on the coast.
Question.
It's mine.
Okay, you can answer that in a minute. The third question was open space contributions. Tyndale's received £36,000, and what it hasn't spent is all allocated. So will any open space money remain unallocated or become available in the future, for example, for parish councils to apply to?
Right.
And if so, when will it become available?
People like to step back in their process. Why are they all different? That's a really good question. We have now got protocols set up with all the key infrastructure providers, education, the NHS. When an application comes in, we ask them not just to come to us with it'd be nice to do this, but they need to come to us with an evidence to request. So the most obvious one is say there's a school in the area, its classrooms are already oversubscribed, and building 100 houses here, the data says that will generate spaces in year one, whatever they are. All the infrastructure providers put their requests in. Generally, the amount, when you add up all their asks, exceeds the amount that's viable in the 106 contribution. Okay. If it's fundamentally a mismatch, say they can't contribute to the highways, the education, the affordable housing, that in itself is a reason for refusing the application. However, what happens more normal is that there has to be an apportionment based on priorities. So in some areas, new schools are absolutely the key issue. In some other areas, affordable housing based on housing waiting lists, etc., and housing need is the most important. So you do see a different flavour in how the 106s are apportioned in different parts of the county. And we'll have to follow that logic through the new infrastructure delivery plan whenever the new airplanes. The CMS issue, for the coastal mitigation payment issue. And did you say that?
Well, I don't know, because I've got some, but that's because it's flood resilience, but it's part of the whole picture. So it's down, is that whether it's different or not? It could be.
It could be flood money, yeah, it could be FCIRM.
Sorry, I think that's money.
Yeah, because we have separately, we have a coastal mitigation strategy is to do with ecological impact. We also have a coastal resilience strategy. We work with the Environment Agency about flood defence, and it could be that. But if you know, I'll check that one out.
Okay.
So what was the last? Am I writing?
It was about the open space. So
Yeah.
the parish councils in my ward all keep their eye on the sport and play pots. And I think we're all waiting to be told that open space money has become available. But I just noticed that everything that Tyndale has received has been spent or allocated.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking there's none available.
No, why we put that in, and this is something we're always keen to do, and it causes some tension, as you can anticipate from what I'm going to say next, is when we make offers to groups, parish councils, for a sport and play scheme, we caveat it and say that there's a lot of demand for this. If you haven't spent it, because sometimes the scheme ends up not being possible, you don't get it, and then we reallocate it. So when it's been allocated, it means it's been provisionally offered to somebody, but it's not been spent yet, and it's not infrequent for them to pay not to take it up. The dynamic though is the overall pot that isn't being topped up the same rate it was historically, because we are moving to a new system. So there's proportionately more of there's more of a statistical representation of allocated and spent than there was historically in the funding. But that should hopefully start to renew once we get the new sport, the open space strategy work done, the objective audit of where.
So the parish councils need told that money is available for
Absolutely,
open space for
Yeah.
a development in their parish.
yes.
And they can either accept it or not. And if they don't accept it, it's another parish.
No, it's not a case of accepting it. It's the availability they are told about, and then they need to put in business cases there for bids, okay? And what we can do, and regularly I sign off and agree bids.
Yeah.
But it always comes with a caveat saying, if you've not spent it within 2 years, it goes back into the pot, and everyone enters the agreement on that basis. And that's to stop people thinking, with all due respect, that's to stop people putting in loads of markers down. They want money, and then they think, "Oh, we'll work something up later." It's not done, so money isn't reserved by someone who isn't going to end up spending it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Can we just clarify what you mean by open space? I think, to do with, if it's got sports and play, right? What caveat is the open spaces? What does that cover?
Yeah, it's meant to be a more a definition which is more reflective of a more issues. It isn't just playgrounds. It's meant to cover all elements of open space as well.
So can I just go back, because I think I agree with her, just to get to the bottom of this, because if you, I mean, we used to have the sport play areas and sport, okay? And now you're saying open spaces. So basically, if in our area we have the playground funding is meant actually to go to the parish because it's for them alone, it's for them. The sport funding is for a broader area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
So we're talking, where does the space come in? Because I just don't know how, as Nick said, how you actually say there's money for open spaces, because where does the open space money come from?
Yeah, I get it, right. And where this comes from is a more broader, more meaningful definition of what we mean by sort of, let's call it recreational leisure facilities and space, okay, right? So what the new policy is meant to do, what the new local plan says, it's a bit like affordable housing, is that in the first instance, if you are building, say, 100 houses, the design needs to include space within it. Okay, play space, appropriately scaled play space within it, an open space for, walking dog, dog exercising or whatever. If, for whatever reason, that is not possible on the site, it goes into a pool, like affordable housing does. And to make that more transparent, we broadened out the definition of not just sport and play, but we call it, I'm sure call it a better term, it's like open activity space. It could cover children's playgrounds, it could cover a sports pitch, it could cover a level walking circuit for elderly people, whatever. It could cover all of it. But the point is that what we've never had is a comprehensive look at the entire county and actually saying what is actually the quality of the provision, because this is an issue that isn't just about how much is in your area, it's about what quality is. And sometimes you are best focusing on certain priority areas, certain priority sites, having good quality, well-managed sport and play facilities on there, rather than just bits of land which aren't well maintained, okay, or well used. Okay.
So can they just to get further, just to get to what Nick's saying? Basically, if a parish council cannot spend the money on play, not sport, that has come for, if it's a 106 agreement and it's housing, affordable housing block, and there isn't room for play, right? You could say to that village that I presume you're giving them choice, the village, the parish itself, to provide that elsewhere in the area.
Yeah.
But it also, that's provision of play, but are you also saying that you will be able to facilitate a more open space? Or how are you allocating the open space out? Because Does that make sense,
It
Trevor?
does.
I'm just trying to get down to the root
It
of
does, yeah.
that.
Can I paraphrase how I think what I think is happening? I think what we've got the legacy sport and play pots. We've got the legacy play pots. We've got the legacy sport pots. By definition, the sport pots tended to be a little bit more broadly defined, but not necessarily. It depends on what was in the actual 106 agreements. And they were to be spent in certain areas. Usually there was an area stated in the agreement, and they sit in pots, and that spreadsheet we talked about on the council website lists all of those. What Rob's now talking about is and they're often very old agreements. That a lot of them go back to way before, well, when I became a councillor in 2017. Now what we've got is a new system that talks about open space money, and that's separate to entirely separate to the 106, the original 106 sport pots and the original play pots.
Yeah, I just clarify that slide. I think you're there or thereabouts. What we're actually saying is that the new policy, which we haven't put in place because we're just finishing off the audit work of what current provision is looking at a more rational approach to this by saying in certain places it's about new provision, and in some places actually the funding will be on improving existing facilities, and it's meant to give a transparent way of looking at it. We haven't assembled yet the actual nuts and bolts of how the apportionment and bidding process will take place, but that's what we
All right, so it's all you.
So then we will consult with, I'll consult via NALC on that, as well as all members, on about transparency and whether or not the emphasis is right on various elements of it. You know, because one of the key drivers behind all this, remember, is that this is really part of the healthier neighbourhoods and tackling health issues by giving people access to open space. Because the problem is, from my perspective, is that we all tend to have a fixed idea of what you provide. But actually, there's an ageing demography in this council. And actually, a standard approach to sport and play may not actually suit the evidence of what is needed in this area, but maybe needs to be more pitched towards an ageing population rather than one which traditionally say we've all been focused on kids' playgrounds. Well, that needs to be evidence driven rather than being just fingered in the air. And this is about making the entire process, along with affordable housing now and education, more structured and transparent.
So can I make a bit of an appeal on this then? Because what I think we're seeing at the moment a little bit is a housing development, and often there'll be quite, a number of small housing developments, and they get planning permission. And as part of that planning permission, they're required to put in a play area. You might get a 20 square yard play area that has a toadstool and a 3-foot slide or something like that, which is actually, I'm describing one that in my ward. So you get lots of little things dotted around the village that the parish council inevitably end up having to maintain and repair. They get vandalised and so on. They end up taking up a lot of time, a lot of resource. Nobody really uses them. And what we would prefer would be bigger schemes like a mugger or a 3G pitch or whatever. And even if we have to wait 10 years while a pot was accumulated to do that, I think that would be a much better approach. And you could also work with schools and share facilities with schools, because I think the danger is of making it on trying to do everything on site. And I don't know how much of this is government policy and how much of it is Northumberland policy, but the danger of trying to do everything on site means that you end up with lots of little things that nobody really wants and miss out on the bigger opportunities.
And I would say that's, again, an astute point, because what we look at, the reason why we're doing this work to actually have an evidence base for it is you're right that you are better having one well-maintained, well-used unit rather than 4 separate ones, which are parts of sites which the developer can't actually build houses on economically anyway.
Yeah.
The other point is, which we need to touch on, is that actually the absolute flip of all this is true, in that sometimes, and you see it often on historic housing estates, some of the small bits of, let's call open space, are deeply unpopular with local residents because they tend not to be overlooked, and they can be the site of antisocial behaviour, etc. So it's about getting the quality. It's an exercise in getting both the quality and the quantity right. Yeah. And this has been the driver guide us looking at it in a structured way. What I'll suggest is that once we have the results of this work and we are moving an approach, once you think through SLT for in general, yes, let's go out to consultation on it. We have a scrutiny session on it because this is really important for parish and town councils.
Yeah, can I suggest that maybe this might be one that comes here before, because this is the sort of thing where the sort of scrutiny arrangements we're trying to get away from sort of immediate pre-scrutiny once the decisions have been made. But I do wonder whether there's an opportunity here to actually use this committee to have a bit of a input into the evolution of this policy.
In that case, can I suggest what we do is a fairly early one then, in that when we have the, well, I like to call it, when we have the evidence in,
yeah,
and we have the analysis, and we have the so what,
yeah.
The next part of the process is normally to write the therefore we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Maybe when we've got the analysis and the so what, we have a meeting to discuss it before we finalise the, well, here's the suggested solution to the so what.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Anne.
Yeah, just one thing. I think we add into this the legal part of it, because the conditions are legally put down. There's the 106 agreement, and therefore I'm not sure what the government says, how long the money has spent, because taking on board what you're saying, rather than having little one, having a big one, some parishes might like to get together and put one mugger thing which is available to everybody. That might not occur for quite a long time. So there has to be a legal way of actually retaining that funding, the project in sight, over a long period of time. Now that is a legal thing.
Yeah.
So I think that needs to be looked at first, because we won't spend our time going around the wrong road and finding that it can't, we can't do it.
Will be, and you can legally require, you can legally sound require contributions to a pot, and you can legally sound require contributions to a pre-identified scheme. And there are timescale issues with both of them which we can apply to. But the great strength of a pot approach is that even if you're putting, say, your £100 in this year, it may be that £100 is spent out of the pot the following month. It may not be your precise £100, but the pot will have spent it, so that can pass the test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. Anybody? Any other questions?
I indicated a while ago, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I missed you, Jack. I thought you were waving at me. I thought you were saying hello.
Waved.
Sorry, Chair.
It's all right.
Sorry.
So can you just remind me, Rob, and I do, when you start, I'm going to know, but right now, this second, I've forgotten why we're not part of the community infrastructure levy.
Right. And that's a right.
Yeah.
The provision for SIL has been in for a number of years. Okay. At the moment, it's non-mandatory that you can use SIL or you can use Section 106. Right. The advantages of a SIL approach is that, unlike 106, which only applies to large schemes, you take it from every single bit of development which is relevant. So, in other words, it would be schemes of, say, 10 or more houses. You've got one house, you pay not on a negotiated basis, you on an agreed amount per square metre.
Yeah.
Therein lies the issue. The amount per square metre is preset, has to go through a public inquiry. So in this county, we would have different rates per square metre for different parts of the county. Right? To get that through, given our markets, it would mean that for a large proportion of the county, that SIL rate could be set at a very low level or potentially zero. Okay. the immediate tension is actually the bulk of the housing delivery of all types, big and small, is in the southeast of the county. That has the lowest values. Okay. When we've done these exercises in the past, it's always been the case that the predicted amount of money you could achieve by a section 106 is higher, even though it applies to a lower pool than a tariff-based approach. And really, that's a process. I mean, we will be having this conversation if we will share. Because the values there are so much higher, the values are much better. An example I'll give you is that back when I was at Sheffield, when we had elements of Scilly, we used to get £8 million a year. And at the same time, districts in the southeast of England were getting £400 million a year in. So we've taken a constant view is that actually the overall amount we would get would be lower. And we did that exercise going into the local plan inquiry, and the local plan steering group said effectively that, you know, they back the approach of going for maintaining the 106 and not going for SIL. The big difference now that we're faced with is that when government consulted on the new tariff-based system, they didn't consult on what do you want it or not. They consulted on how. So it was pitched as a mandatory system. Much of the country said we don't agree with this because of the reasons I've just outlined. And I think it's the complexity of this, of squaring the circle. Government has slow-timed it slightly, and they've had time to introduce it. So it may not be introduced. But the potential for having SIL is always there. The one thing that when the new regulations are announced, what is possible or may be possible is to have a mix and match approach. I don't know, but that'll depend on what's in the regulations then when they are. It's a hard one, Jeff, because section 106, for all the reasons we've described today, is an inordinately convoluted and complex system that ultimately results in us negotiating on a case-by-case basis with volume house builders whose interest it is. It's in their interest to argue the least viability, so they pay less.
Yeah.
And that's why we have independent viability assessments, somebody going outside from external bodies. A tariff system, when it's in place, is much easier to administer. Which effectively would be cash coming in and we would spend it how we wish to. The one tension comes though from a tariff-based system is that because you're going to be getting, on the face of it, houses in certain parts of the county paying much more than say in the southeast, the risk comes in is that you collect relatively more in the areas that need less infrastructure than you do in the area that needs more of it. So it needs a strategy, and we will be faced with an argument to what distribution mechanism we use. Will we distribute new infrastructure funding on the basis of need, or on the basis of, well, it was paid in this patch, therefore it needs to be spent in this patch? And the regulations for SIL don't suggest that. They say just you have a prioritisation based approach. So it could be the worst of all worlds.
Do you? Thank you. I didn't think you were going to say that, actually. I thought you were going to say the reason I haven't got the community infrastructure levy is because we didn't have a local plan in place. But what you've actually said is the reason we decided not to take that approach was because it was financially more advantageous for us to stay in 106.
There is a slight one to it that the time we tabled the local plan, that would have been the time to decide. Let's go for SIL. But actually, what we looked at then, it was just
Well, there we go. Live and learn. So, if I may, Chair,
Yes, of course.
there's loads of figures in here. How sure are you that they are right? Because the first one I tried on page 40 is wrong. So,
I'm not the same. I'm not the same on your. So what paragraph?
well, this is local area breakdown of development funds kind of, which 40 years ago played. No, we received 1,613,000, etc. Spent 1,347,000, and then 72 was allocated, and that leaves a balance of 192,888. But actually, the way I worked it out, it's 192,537, or 573, sorry. So that's just one that I tried.
Yeah.
And so how get out of that.
Yeah,
And then when we had money.
yeah, what, right,
So all I would say is that, you know, I love anything with figures in. I absolutely love it. And I can't, my pedantry will not allow me to just accept what's there.
yeah.
So, I mean, I find the report very useful. And I appreciate the amount of effort that goes into it, but could you just check the maths?
Yeah. That could be, and it's a spreadsheet from me, that could be though, that having received it and spent it, there may be an overlap in terms of some of the, what that sounds, that imagine it sounds like that could be a scheme. Look, I've seen schemes that have a composites between an allocation and part of it's being spent, but we may actually ask for some of it back.
So that's not what that says.
But these are all summary figures.
So perhaps you should put a figure on that says plus or minus 10%.
Well, it's,
Anyway, that's by the by.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, we take it at face value.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you just kind of knocks your confidence a bit when the very first thing you try, I know it's only
Few hundred quid.
300 quid.
Yeah.
But
It could be that the awards are made, but the claimant can only claim what they actually spent. So if they actually ended up spending a little bit more than they were awarded as a grant, that could be the difference. It's basically an unspent award.
Except that's not what that says.
No.
And there is no footnote anyway
Yeah.
that says, oh, by the way, these might not be right because of this, that, and the other. And if that's true, then that's fine. Just put a little footnote on saying Councillor Reid's an idiot. But actually, you know, so, but all of this stuff is really interesting. And I'm glad to see that, you know, underneath all the politics and all of the machinations we all go, that the council's actually doing good stuff. You know, and then but what I would say is that, you know, out of the 5 million quid, or however much we've ended up spending this year, I just wonder how much input the councillors have had about where it's gone and who spent it. And I'm just worried at this point about the political.
On sport and play, it's an application process as Rob has outlined. So any organisation in any community can apply for it if there's money in that pot. So it could be a parish or town council, it could be a school, it could be a sports club, and
who makes a decision?
It's a committee of officers largely, and me as a member, and it's totally apolitical. There's a scoring. There's a very.
Don't get me wrong. This isn't about.
Yes.
This isn't about.
No, but I was saying there's a scoring.
In that sense, it's just, you know, all of this at the end of the day is public money.
Yeah, there's a very defined set of
individuals
criteria.
Ultimately, will be held responsible for it.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
the council will carry on, but some of us could kind of live or die by some of the decisions that we haven't actually been able to have any influence over.
Yeah, there's a scoring system that basically one for sport and one for play. Each application is scored against a set of criteria that have presumably been agreed by the council's legal departments. And if the application meets the threshold, then the money is allocated, and it's and the officers that sit on that committee are from the Section 106, the planning department, and also from the sort of sport and open spaces departments. So it's a sort of, and they are spread from different parts of the county as well. So I think it's a reasonable process. All the decisions are recorded, and then they all get run past Rob for approval. once they're made.
But this doesn't
and then
appear
the
in our
information
budget
is-
yet, does it?
Sorry?
This doesn't appear in the council budget.
It's-
All I'm saying is.
Yeah, but there is a spreadsheet on the website that explains who's had what. And any member can go on there at any time and you can read that. And I'm sure if you wanted to query any of the awards.
I personally would not
share the scoring.
All I'm trying to do, Chair, is get us past the hour, so I'm just.
You're doing a good job. Okay.
But all I'm saying, Chair, is that this is a lot of money and I would not doubt for one moment that it's being allocated and spent properly. But I just don't actually see the councillor's input.
Yeah, okay.
On this.
Well, we'll send you the link. We'll send you the link. We'll circulate the link.
What I'm saying is that this is not part of the budgetary process as far as, you know,
No, it's not.
I didn't go in there in February and abstain. So this wouldn't happen or would happen. It doesn't even appear anywhere in our budget, but it's sitting there and it's millions of pounds that get spent. And it's not anything that we as councillors have had any real.
No, that's fine.
That is the only point.
Yeah.
And if we could just check the maths.
Yeah.
Or put a little thing there that says
It might not be, yeah.
it might not be all that accurate because of this, that and the other.
Okay, two things. I'll answer two questions, if I may, Chair. First of all, is that when I arrived, it was clear that we needed to do something about section 106.
Yeah.
So we had an audit done of our all processes. And that made a number of recommendations, all of which have been followed through. And they audited on the basis of transparency, robustness. And we've had a follow-up audit done as well to make sure that the systems are all embedded and are working, and there's some fine tweaking to do after that. So I'm confident that this is compared, I would say, and this has been confirmed by government as well, that compared with the average, this is a robust way of doing it and a transparent way of doing it. The other thing is I have to really emphasise, and it's when I always start my presentations off now, 106. 106 money never touches general fund. It never touches the housing revenue account. It should not be regarded as in itself as a discretionary funding pot to make choices with. What it is absolutely is meant to be there for. This is difficult for me to explain to parish councils sometimes. It's that it is regarded in the same way as a planning condition, that it's meant to offset the impact of a particular planning application. So the entire way we've structured things like protocols with education and health providers, etc., is focused around, I'll come back to it again, not any sort of list of things they would like to do, but things they can evidence they would do. And actually, the calculation, even if we move forward to where we're going to have a new open space provision approach, we agreed with the planning inspector what sort of that level of contribution would be. Well, you can't anticipate every one of the thousands of applications that we determine every year in advance. It has been strategically evaluated. So this is like the impact on education, healthcare, etc. So it is all tied up and justifiable. That's why it'll be a monumental piece of work to move away from this, which is really heavily evidenced now, to a new approach based on a tariff, where basically we will be given what you're saying, a big chunk of money, but it will be very much more a political decision about prioritisation to how to spend. But that is, I'll come back to the point, is that is still to be decided by government to how they operate. Everyone has fiddled with this over the years, because fundamentally, let's look at this objectively. Perhaps as my closing statement is that government has said that it is right and proper that those who make profit through land values going up through the grant of planning permission should pay for the implications of that. Everyone will say yes. The development industry will say yes, but we're asking too much. And this is meant to be a process which is meant to equalise all that. And have a rational debate about what is an appropriate level of contribution from the private sector.
One final question from me. Do the developers, when somebody makes a planning application, do they have to state the gross development value of the application currently?
Right, right. When we did the local plan, what I've been talking about is what we did was what's called a plan level viability exercise. So in advance of all the 106s that are coming in now, we had a number of sessions with inspectors in the private sector to what an assumed level of contributions would be in different parts of the county. If a developer comes in and says, yes, we will pay our contribution, be that, 20% affordable housing or whatever, they do not need to go through a viability exercise. If they want to pay less than that, they have to justify it on the basis of evident viability evidence.
So it's not the default position, it's a sort of, exception position.
Sorry, a little quick one. This was meant to be a magic wand to make 106s look quicker. What happens is that virtually every developer challenges it.
Great. Last question from Jeff.
Yeah, it was just, well, it's more of a statement that Rob can deny if you like. Actually, when you say developers pay this, it's not the developers, it's the money's just stuck on the house, isn't it? So it's the people who buy the houses that pay it. I mean, it doesn't, you're not looking at Persimmon who make like £1 billion and you don't go along and say, well, actually, you're only going to make £500 million because we're going to take half of the money you make profits to put back into the communities that you've built. It's like, here's a house, it's cost us 100,000 to build. The council want 10,000, so it's 110,000. I mean, that's actually how it works.
Yeah.
The developers don't actually pay anything. It's the building societies that lend the people who build the house, they buy the house, pay.
Yeah, I mean, that is true and it's not true. Okay. And that
Excellent.
Yeah, it is.
There's an
Well, that presupposes that the demand for housing is inelastic, doesn't it?
I wasn't going to go to there because where housing demand is remarkably inelastic, and that's why the argument is building more houses lowers the price because it doesn't always. But to go into more of the nuts and bolts of this is that when we do the viability exercise, and they say we can only afford to give you £100. Part of that, and Nick touched on this, is part of the viability exercise is basically costs of development versus sale price, right? And they will state what sale price they get, and that gives them the margin for contributions. If they achieve higher values than they suggested originally, we include a clawback arrangement. So if they do put their prices, it becomes a self-defeating argument for them because they say the more they say they're going to charge for them, the more they can afford to pay. So this is all of the art of how you do the viability evaluation. But it is, I agree with you, it's if you were talking about cans of beans and there's only one place, there's only one shop in England that sold beans, you could set the price. But clearly, housing is an odd product because you can choose where to buy. And let's remember a real truism about what we mean by price inelasticity, in that I can show you a brick-built Victorian house, say in the southeast of the county, and I can show you the exact same house built in Islington. And so what do you pay the difference for? Yeah, quite. And it isn't just a case of supply and demand with housing. It's all about latent demand. And housing is a classic example of there is no value to a house apart from the construction costs. There's no value difference really in a pound value sense from that house in the southeast of the county, Victorian Villa, Islington. It's what the market is willing to pay.
And on that note, a flashback to my A-level economics days or O-level economics days. So we'll finish that. Sorry, Anne, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I'm just going to go to what Jeff mentioned, but if you look at the local Tynedale area, which we have got an open space allocation thing at the moment, obviously there's policy in place there already, so we need to have a look at that.
Okay.
If we're going to have a look at it scrutinising, because it's already been putting money in.
So can we circulate the policy on the
We
open
need to
spaces?
do that.
Yeah, it's both a residual policy and there's a
Oh, well,
non-policy.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to have a look at both, so
Yeah.
just so people understand it.
Yeah.
And the other one is when you say we've received, say for play, 1,630,000 whatever, and spent. So are you saying this is for year 22-23? So are those housing, is that when you actually receive the money? When the planning application is signed, right? And how is that spent? Because that's the trouble of that actually understanding the whole of this, because we've received, is that because you've received it money? So the applications, I'm trying to say, if I actually looked at the applications for year 2022-23, would we actually find planning applications which have been agreed in that year with that funding attached to it?
Yeah, and I would say, and I apologise, but it's not that simple. Because what you have as well is when we talk about funding secured, sometimes, if say it's to build 100 houses, right, you can get applications, like committee grants for 100 houses. Each one is section 106 saying they will pay £1,000 for stuff, right? Some of those schemes will get built out very quickly and pay. Some of them will be built out slowly and not hit their trigger points. And in fact, sometimes it's in developers' interest to throttle back. And other times schemes never go ahead. So they can be secured when permission actually ends up lapsing before it's implemented. And that would still be captured in terms of funding secured, even though that scheme never happens. And that's why headline figures are very different. All they are is, I'll come back to what I made to Jeff, they're an indication of the scale of the question we're looking at. So actually, if we're talking about overall figures, which added up to £15,000 for the entire county, it would be worth us going through the process we go through.
Great, thank you very much. Right, so I think to wrap that item up, we've obviously the recommendation here is that the paper is presented to us for information purposes. We've received that. Thank you very much, Rob. That was a very interesting presentation. There's a few items that have been noted in terms of circulating further information and policies and so on. So they'll get picked up by the minutes and actioned. And then we also had an item where we offered to get involved in the development of the new space policy. And I think the mechanism for doing that is partly going to be determined by the timescales and how detailed it is. What I would say is that we'd like to do that so it's not just something that we consider a week before, once the policy's been finalised, a week before the cabinet adopt that policy. If we can get involved at an earlier stage, then I think that you'll get more out of it from us.
Just to be clear, what we're talking about, various terms describe it. Is making run some of the evidence in, and we've understood the implications of the evidence, and we have a
Yeah. At that point, yeah. And if you could maybe circulate that in the first instance, and then we as a committee decide whether we bring that or we form a subgroup or we just give you written comments or whatever. But I think some input we would like to offer. That's great. So everybody happy with all that? And we'll move on to the next item. So thank you very much, Rob. And the next item is the monitoring report on pages 55 to 62. Does anybody, Mark?
Yeah, Chair, I had Rob here and discussed it in the pre-meeting on page 61 on the 29th of November. We had a presentation and we made some recommendations to Cabinet about more investment for enforcement. And I believe there has been a piece of work done on that. Could that be shared with committee members just to see where the direction you're heading in? I don't feel it needs to come as a scrutiny item at the moment, but I think if there's been a piece of work done, it would be appreciated to see it.
Yeah, just to be clear, the kind of the members talking about is that I presented a paper to scrutiny on planning performance in totality. And the main thing that you were interested in was the enforcement part of that. I subsequently took a paper to the executive and SLT, purely focused on issues facing planning enforcement in the county at the moment. That's been through, but I had a number of recommendations on it.
Yeah.
And so I'll circulate that.
Yes, brilliant. That would be great. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments on this item?
Not on this item.
No, and then finally, any other business?
Can I do the other item though? Can I mention the report? It was just, remember we had that long conversation about bus subsidy?
Yes, yes, yeah.
You've never heard any, and Gordon was here, he said, yeah, we had a long conversation about bus subsidies. We were going to get a report going back.
We must have had a report somewhere because I looked it up recently to find out which buses in the Tynedale area are being subsidised. So there's definitely been a report somebody, but I can't remember.
I don't think we've had here for discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob.
Thank
you.
It was highlighted in it's in the issues to timetable of the North East Transport Plan.
Yes,
Sorry,
never mind.
the North East Transport Plan.
Yeah.
And we were told that it was still being formulated.
Yeah.
As soon as it was ready to come to this committee, it would do. Having said that, that was when Janice, that was before Janice left. So,
Just think what we needed to know was it's important for members that we do some subsidised bus services. I have some.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people in far rural areas have them, and they need to know because they need to ensure that whatever the programme is, whatever the new programme is, they are included because otherwise it'll just be missed out. And
So
I'm not being, I'm just trying to.
No, absolutely.
Not the whole thing.
So what we'll ask for, very specifically, because I think it exists, because I did look at it up recently, is which bus routes in each area are subsidised by the council, and we'll get a list circulated to members of the committee. That's as a starting point, and then if that brings any issues to surface, we can deal with them from there.
I would check that,
Yeah.
It needs to, we've got this new committee or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is going into, it needs to feed in, or we need to have an input somewhere into that, or even to members of that.
Because there is the new pot of money that we're currently tipping into. I mean, I've had 2 additional services put in my ward for the next 3 years with this additional money. That may be worth looking at a report that of what's been allocated, what have they allocated on, what's left, what direction are they heading in? Because this is kind of officers looking at and making ideas and then working with local members to put the routes in. So maybe there might be a report in there interlinking into subsidised routes.
Okay, well, so the starting point then is, okay, so just to add to that then, we're asking for what's already subsidised and what plans there are in place for things that haven't yet happened.
Additional money coming in.
Yeah, okay, so we can ask for, we'll ask that to be circulated, and then once that's circulated at the next meeting, we can discuss under any other business whether or not that needs a bit more detailed deep dive. I think we may find that we had the same answer as last time, whereas because the new Northeast Authority kicks in next month, doesn't it? And that is the purse holder for all of this. But the key thing we're all interested in is what's being subsidised in our areas at the moment, and is that going to continue?
I think we need a bigger picture because we've all got different people doing different things. And
Well, we need to understand.
Okay, well, we'll get the information first as a starting point, and then we can have a detailed discussion about what we want to do with that information once we've all seen it. Any other items of any other business? No. Right.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask it, Rob, because I've got memories. The tree policy.
Yes.
Did we ever actually get a policy?
I think we did. We got a policy. Yeah, we got an updated policy, didn't we? And we didn't all agree with it, but we got it. Yeah.
I think in draft form.
A draft form. That's what I'm saying. So have we got a policy in place?
Right.
I'll follow that up. Great.
We'll ask. Yeah.
That would be interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And we were also told that the tree management policy was part of the wider trees and woodland strategy. So it might be worth asking to see
Is that complete? Yeah.
completed policy and to ask how the strategy is coming on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I should say that you've,
Sorry.
you haven't circulated it because we're closing this year off. But I can tell you that you've already got a very full work programme right the way up to September before we even add anything else to it.
Well, I think we just circulate the policies and then we can read them, and if anything comes up out of them, we can add that to a future agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a follow-up from the previous meeting, isn't it, on trees? Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. We do have a word plan.
Oh, yes, just a quick update on the work programme. We've got a report on roads maintenance coming next month. And we had a discussion the other day with officers about that. And we've decided to sort of split that into two because it's such a big topic and it affects us all, and it affects all residents. So the first report is going to be a more generic report about the policies, how the money's spent, that sort of thing. And then the second report is going to be a deeper dive into basically fundamentally water management really on roads, and so about gullies, ditches, that sort of thing. And because it's an area that keeps it obviously this year particularly it's been very bad with all of the rain that we've had, and things like water runoff and that sort of stuff. So we went through it for about 45 minutes the other day with officers, and the feeling was that even though it's probably I think it's going to be the only item on the agenda, it would be too much for one meeting. So we agreed to carve it up into two.
So it'd be surfacing, infrastructure,
Yeah.
finance, grading responses in the first, but actually looking into the issues that we've all highlighted, the drainage, gullies and maintenance after that.
In a second. So
Can I just ask, because I think it's interesting, one of the things that I know you're talking about infrastructure, which is important. However, the different ages of infrastructure, I think that would be helpful. So if you look at Cramlington to Newtown, so it was a new town, obviously their infrastructure is new. My infrastructure is probably Victorian, which it is.
Yeah.
So yours might be back to the Romans, Mark. I don't know when your infrastructure was put in place.
We've tried to stand though, honestly.
But it's actually to do with our understanding about the actual age of the infrastructure too, because I think that's quite important, but also going with the use and everything else that varies age, which will come in. But I think it's important for us to all recognise the differences we have.
I think they'll touch upon that, because what they do, we had part of the discussion we had the other day was there's a different approach in different areas to roads maintenance, and then out of necessity, because some areas, the more urban areas, have a lot more traffic. The road closure issues are much more complex. And so on. So they actually use different techniques in different areas. So I think that will be touched upon. I think we just have to take it as a given that some places are newer than others. I get people regularly complaining that or pointing out that the Romans never needed to fix potholes. But we have
turn wagons.
So but that will. I think that it won't be. We're not going to get a list of how old each asset is in each part of the county.
I just think it's just.
But it will take into account the fact that different areas have different
It may
problems.
be touched upon because the technology that we've asked to be updated on what technology we use, and they are core in roads, and that they are building up that much better picture through a conversation I've had with Rob McCarthy. So hopefully that will come into the first discussion on what technology they're using and we can build from.
And we also touched on Fix My Street as well, and the feedback loops on Fix My Street and stuff. So it should be quite a complex, comprehensive report. But that will be in the next two meetings.
Can we just ask that we have that one subject on the agenda for that the first meeting, a second, because otherwise it'll give us time to actually drill down and have a big understanding. Are you going to put a whole lot more things?
No, as I say, the work programmes for the main meeting, normally you've got the highways maintenance programme, you've got the Great Northumberland Forest, which was requested to the council, and you've also got the report on social housing. So you got.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, you know, the work programme belongs to you. If you want to knock any of those out, just.
Who's providing supper?
Yes, I was going to say, yes, I mean, I'm quite willing to.
Well, these are all things that people have asked for, and I think if I remember rightly, I tried to resist the Great Northumberland Forest one, but and I was outvoted. But it was, yeah. I mean, if that's we can either try and push them back to later meetings. Let's just take it.
Chair, as far as the Great Northumberland Forest is concerned, I promise I'll not, if you say, look, Jeff, don't say anything, I won't.
Yeah.
But I would just like somebody to come and tell me something in an open forum about, we give millions of pounds a year away to people to plant trees.
Yeah.
And do we ever hear, do we get any feedback from anybody? Does anybody tell us? No. So
we'll keep that on the agenda.
Disappear.
We'll keep it on the agenda.
And I promise, if you tell me.
Yeah, you can say as much as you want, but just be mindful of the fact that we've got a lot of. Yeah, and we're all going to have to split.
Let's just do first and get our answers back.
Split now. Yeah. It is a good job we split the report, otherwise we would be.
Yeah, can we put questions in first then? Because I could put a load of questions in, probably like chapter.
Well, I think you need to see the report first, but if the report, you get the report a week before the meeting, get the report. If you've got specific questions that you want to ask that you think officers may not have in their heads when they come and present it, then send an email, just, copy us all in, and then that can be done. Social housing, I think is something that again affects us all as councillors and affects a lot of residents. So I think that's an important item to keep on the agenda. So let's just leave it as it is. It's not going to be a 1 hour and 22-minute meeting. It's probably going to be 2.5 hours, I'm guessing. But we're just going to have to be disciplined, and I'll be as I'll try and chair the meeting as well as I can.
Just be ruthless.
Good. Okay. That meeting's closed. Thank you.